Bulls overcome an 18-point deficit to book a place in what will be their fourth URC final. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. What a great comeback by the Bulls in this one, but let's start at the beginning of the game and see where things went wrong for Glasgow. So starting off, Bulls, they attacking early on, but there is a double hit from Glasgow, dislodges the ball. They get the scrum, but Bulls massive pressure on the scrum, and Glasgow just about get the ball out before Bulls then concede a penalty for side entry. But straight away you're thinking, if there's a lot of scrums in this game, that's going to be advantage to the Bulls after that. We then have a nice little kick over the top from the Bulls. Glasgow get to the loose ball first in their own 22, but the Bulls chase a swarm in and forcing Glasgow to seal off. Penalty to the Bulls. Pollard opens the scoring from the tee, 3 points to 0. Glasgow then moving the ball quickly on attack. Bulls blitzing with good line speed. Glasgow looking to get to that edge to beat that blitz defence, but there's a deliberate knock on from Pollard. He goes to the bin and Glasgow look to take advantage. They go up the line into the 22, but Bulls manage to turn the ball over and can clear. Glasgow get the better of a kick exchange as Aronsa, after collecting a kick, gets forced into touch. Glasgow then strike off the line out as they spread it left to right. Stain rides a tackle to score in the corner. And then Lancaster converts from out wide for 7 points to 3. Glasgow then on attack again. Dempsey with a strong carry before they move it to Lancaster. He finds Tuipulotu. He fixes the defence before putting Stain over for his second, convert from 14 points to 3. And things really looking good for Glasgow. Bulls then back to 15 and they look to attack. They're working into 22, but Klopper is pinged as he seals off. At this period of game, you can see with the Bulls, a lot of it is going through the forwards. We're not seeing kind of the linking up that really makes them tick when the likes of Hanekom appears, mixing in with the backs, that kind of stuff. It's all just going for power, and they're getting positions, but they're not actually being able to take advantage of those positions. Glasgow then go up the line to about 10 meters out. They go to their maul. They've got penalty advantage. The backs pile in and they continue to surge forward before it just kind of all breaks up, comes down over the line. Looks like they've been held up, but a penalty try has been awarded. Ruan Nokia goes to the bin. And at that stage then, it's a penalty try, so it's 21 points to 3, and things really looking good for Glasgow. Bulls, though, begin making progress as they pick and go into 22. Darge gets over the ball, but the tackler hasn't rolled away, so it's penalty in front of the post to the Bulls. And at this stage already, 18 points down. They're not going to take to 3. They're looking to tap, and it's Grobbelaar taps it. Shortly after, they win another penalty for playing the halfback. Tap it again. They work it up to the line with another penalty advantage. We then have a TMO check for possible try. Kutsia, was looking to ground, but Dempsey had kind of just stripped it forward from him. So that's a knock on, but we come back for the latest penalty advantage. And then after a number of attempts at the line, Grobbelaar gets it down on the line, converts for 21 points to 10. And we've spoken about Grobbelaar recently, about the fact that he has that ability when nobody else in your team is quite able to get over that line from a meter or so out. He's one of the few guys in World Rugby that can do it, and he delivered again today. And what a crucial score as well, getting a little bit of momentum back for the Bulls and stemming, that run for Glasgow, who at that point had scored 3 tries unanswered. Glasgow then get the ball in space, and they go left. Rowe has a one-on-one with Aronson. He steps him, but Aronson does really well, gets a bit of a tap on him, and it's enough to, for him to go down and then to cause a knock on as well. Just great cover defense there, because it looked for all the world that, once Rowe had put that footwork on, that Glasgow were going to get in behind and add another try. Bulls then win a penalty at the scrum, and they're able to clear, and then game runs down to half time, 21-10 at the break. In the second half, Bulls making ground at the 22. Cummings not rolling away, and he goes to the bin because the Warriors were on a warning because of the number of penalties they've given away, just before half time. Bulls then work it up to the line before Papier darts over to score. Conversions missed, 21 points to 15. Bulls then continuing to attack. They go right to left. LaRue with a long pass to Hanekom, who then does so well. Like he's out wide left, and he decides, actually, we want to be further in field. So he runs diagonally. He's looking for, almost Pinot like, looking for that chink in the defense. Little bit of, evasive running, then spots his gap, goes for it, gets within a couple of meters. He's right in the shadow of the post as well, and it's looking really good for the Bulls. Recycle a couple of times, and then Klopper goes over to score under the post, convert for 22 points to 21. The Bulls lead. Great work from Hanekom there. You think back to that moment now, knowing the final score, and you think, what if Hanekom had instead, gone up the line out wide left, and maybe they score in the corner, but they missed the conversion, and then they need to score again to potentially win the game, and that's, moments like that can completely change the game. And I think, certainly, again, got to give massive credit to Hanekom for that. I think part of it was the fact that the pass from LaRue was above his head, so he had to reach up to get it. So he had no momentum on his initial carry, and maybe that forced his hand in terms of looking for space on the inside, and then just his natural talent then took over from there. But either way, brilliant decision from him, brilliant work from him, and great finish from Klopper as well. Glasgow then with a penalty around halfway, and it's marched forward 10 meters as there's a bit of back chat from the Bulls. Glasgow, as usual, not even thinking about going for the posts. Although again, as a neutral, you kind of sometimes you have to question, maybe a bit more pragmatism when a game is that close. You got a chance of 3 points, you're 1 point down. But obviously they back themselves, and it's worked for them so often. Why is it not going to work for them today is probably what you're thinking. But they go up the line to about 10 meters out. They go to the maul. Bulls don't do really well to disrupt it. They're driving them back. They hold them up, turn it over, and just brilliant defense there. And then I think the Bulls then win a penalty in the resulting scrum. They clear. Glasgow then back in their own half. Looks like they're forcing it a little bit as they look to go wide. Again, they're always looking to get to that width where they know where the space is because of that, the umbrella shape of that Bulls blitz. If you can get out beyond it, and not just space there, you're going to make plenty of ground. And because of the way the defenders are rushing up as well, it's almost certain that if you do get in behind, you're going to have probably 1 or 2 people on your shoulder. You're going to have cover coming across, and if if the ball carrier can draw and pass, you're probably in for a try. So you can see why they're doing that. But as they try and go wide, they force it a little bit, and there's a forward pass in there. And one of the big differences, I think, as well between Glasgow first half and second half was that quality under pressure. It kind of deserted them in the second half. Bulls then attack on the back of a strong scrum. They're into 22. Moody chips over, looks to reclaim, but the bounce favours Glasgow, who are able to clear. But you're really feeling like, you know, the team that's behind, whenever I see the team that's behind being the ones who are kind of last ditch defense and stuff, it's great play and all, but you need to be up the other end of the field, and it's not happening for them. Lancaster then gets pinged for an extra roll after the tackle. Bulls decide to go for the post. It's an ambitious kick, even for Hundred Pollard, and he's off target with that. But as I said, tough kick even for somebody of his quality. You know, it was way out, and it was out near the touchline as well. So I don't know how, it was well over 50 meters, I think, on the angle. Glasgow then give away exactly the same penalty. This time Adam Hastings, who's just on the field, gives an extra roll. This one central, 40 meters out, and it looks to be going over, but then it comes back off the upright, and Glasgow can clear. Nervy moments then from both teams, as first Kyle Rowe slices a kick after going quickly from a mark. Then Nizam Carr knocks on as the Bulls look to run that slice kick back. But then the Bulls crucially win the penalty at the scrum on Glasgow field, Glasgow's feed, and they point to the post again. This one misses right, but you still feel Glasgow, they can't keep giving him chances to kill the game, because, you know, a kicker of Pollard's quality again, you know, he's missed 4 kicks in the game, but you feel like he's going to come good at some stage if you keep, you know, giving him chances. And maybe it wasn't his day from the tee, but at the same time, you know, he's got that confidence to back himself. And I think if he had gotten another kick, he probably would have nailed it. We then have 5 minutes to go. It's a 1-point game, but at this point, you know, I'm thinking Glasgow haven't scored a point for 50 minutes. You know, the penalty try was awarded on the 25th minute. We're now at the 75th minute, and you just can't do that, you know, in games like this. You know, it's a tight game. It's a semi-final. It's knockout rugby. There's always that mantra of keep that scoreboard ticking, keep it ticking. And that's where that pragmatism comes in, taking your shots at goal. That's what the Bulls are trying to do. And we weren't seeing any of that from Glasgow. In fairness, they weren't making many chances, but the chances that they were getting, they were trying to just completely kill the game by, you know, getting a try. And then, you know, probably with the mindset that if we get a try, then the Bulls probably won't be able to win the game from the tee. They'll have to respond with a try, and that's certainly brave. But again, if you haven't scored a point in 50 minutes, get something on the board, give the crowd something to cheer, and, you know, get yourself a bit of a lift. And then if there's a defensive effort to come, like, you know, everyone is kind of pulling together from there. Then Bulls come again. They're looking for the winning score, but Carr knocks on. Glasgow, you feel like they need to get out of their own half, though, at this point. And then Glasgow finally do. They're attacking in the final minute, but then Hans, brilliant tackle from him. Then there's clear release, gets in for the poach, wins a penalty. There's less than a minute to go. Bulls go up the line. By the time they're taking the line out, the clock is in the red, claim the line out, and Grobbelaar puts it off the field for full time. 22 points to 21. Bulls absolute deserved winners. Brilliant from them. Into their 4th final. We've only had 5 years of the URC, and now this is going to be their 4th time in the final. And, you know, just that grit, you know, that kind of experience of being in these situations before, I think, got them back in the game and then got them to win in the end as well. So let's have a look at the stats and then we'll talk about each of the teams. So let me pull the stats up here on the official site. Okay, so first off, 3 tries each in the game. Possession 48-52 in favor of Glasgow, and I think they don't, like the URC don't give half by half, but I would imagine that that was probably the other way around. In first half, it was towards the end of that first half that the Bulls started to take a little bit of control, and in the second half they had most of the control in the game. Offloads then 4-3, meters gained 414 to 349, and then clean breaks. This is I think a damning statistics for Glasgow. 11 clean breaks to 3, and then defenders beaten 13-17. And let me just pull up a stat here that we were talking about before the game as well. I love when stats that you highlight before games actually become relevant in the game itself. So we talked about how Glasgow were the worst team in terms of converting clean breaks to tries, that it was taking 7 on average 7 clean breaks for every try that they scored, and the Bulls were at 4.77, so 7.1 for Glasgow and 4.77 for the Bulls. And it's something we talked about in the build up to this game, that in terms of clean breaks, the Bulls are going to be the more clinical of the two teams, and Glasgow would have to keep creating those chances because they need that volume to be able to get the try. And we witnessed it in this game as well. They got themselves 3 tries, but again, it came off the back of 11 clean breaks. So they did better than their average through the season. But you have the Bulls 3 clean breaks. They got 3 tries in the game. Obviously, not all the tries come from clean breaks, but it's more a case of, clean breaks leading to situations that then become tries is the thing, right? So the fact that the Bulls were more efficient with their chances that they made proved to be that just paper thin difference between the teams. And then if we look again at defenders beaten, so Glasgow beat 13 defenders for 11 clean breaks, so almost a 1-to-1 conversion there. And the Bulls 17 defenders beaten and 3 clean breaks for them, so that's like more than 1 in 5, or 1 in more than 5, should I say, for them. And then if we look at it over the year, generally, the Bulls were made more clean breaks than Glasgow over the years. So Glasgow certainly did well to limit the number of clean breaks that they got. But again, it's just that efficiency from the Bulls. They got themselves in position in that 22. It was a lot of kind of grunt to get over the line. Sometimes it's just quick thinking, like for Papier's try. But yeah, that's the difference between the teams, is that conversion rate. Onto defence then, territory, 42% for Glasgow, 58% for the Bulls. And again, it's really that second half, Bulls pinning Glasgow in their own half and not giving them any kind of chance to get in those positions to be winning penalties and have that decision: do we kick for the post or do we go to the corner? Glasgow only got to make that decision once in the entire second half, and as the home team as well. So that tells you how well the Bulls played in the game. I think number of tackles then, 156 to plays 118, missed tackles 17-13. And then I'm going to check something here because they're telling me what the tackle percentages are. But if you watch me before, you know that this official percentage is wrong, and we're going to want to check exactly what the official what the correct number is compared to the official number. So let me just give me a second to pull that up. Just working them out here now on the fly. Okay, almost done. Okay. Okay, and then make that there. Okay. And right, so the official tackle success percent is 83 plays 82, and it doesn't make sense with those numbers, because if Glasgow had tackle success of 83%, having missed 17 tackles, well, 83 plus 17 is 100, so they would have had to make 100 tackles, is the thing, right? To have missed 17 tackles, they would have had to have attempted 100 overall, but they attempted 156 overall, so that's obviously wrong. And then the same on the Bulls side of thing as well. So the official tackle success 83 versus 82. The actual tackle success is 90.17 plays 90.09. So you know, and you look at it, you can see that you know, Glasgow overall attempted 173 tackles, missed 17 of them. It's very clear to see, therefore, they missed about 10% of their tackles, and that's what it shows. And then the Bulls overall attempted 131 tackles, missed 13 of them. And again, it's really clear to see it's a 10% difference. So they should both be around 90%, and if you work it out, they are. So again, I don't know who does the URC stats, but you know, the premier competition, you know, for like 5 nations put together, club competition, you know, the domestic competition, and we can't get a better set of stats than this. It's crazy, but let's keep going on anyway. Turnovers won, then 6 each. Turnovers lost 4-6, which tells you that you know, Glasgow coughed up 2 turnovers, you know, probably through like 4 passes, knock-ons, that kind of stuff. Kicking, then kicks and play 25-28, and then kick meters 684-754, which tells you that Glasgow were going for more of the contestables, but it was actually the Bulls who come out the better side of that. Kicks retained just 1 for Glasgow and 4 for the Bulls. So the Bulls winning that aerial contest. And, you know, it was something, again, that we talked about in the build-up, that, you know, percentage retained. Glasgow had retained 16% of their kicks, and the Bulls with just an edge with 17% overall. But the Bulls certainly supercharged that today. And then we look at the kick success at goal, 100% for Glasgow converted all 3 of their tries, 43% for the Bulls. You know, that is kind of a unicorn moment almost. You know, you're not going to see 43% for Handré Pollard in a top level game for a very, very long time ever again, if we ever do see it again from him. You know, I think something I can almost guarantee, whatever happens with the Bulls in the final, if Pollard is kicking, he's, you know, going to be a hell of a lot better than 43%. Okay, on to set piece then. Lineouts, 14 from 14 for Glasgow, 12 from 13 for the Bulls, 100% placed, 92%. Glasgow, you know, in the first half, using it to their advantage, but then second half, I thought the Bulls defended the maul really well. And because they're defending the maul so well, they basically took away the lineout as a weapon for Glasgow, because Glasgow never, you know, really got into position where they felt like they could actually move the ball off a lineout. You know, either they were having lineouts in their own half, or they had that one lineout where they kicked up the line from the penalty and they went to the maul rather than moving it and trying to use their back line. On to Scrums then 6 from 7 for Glasgow and 6 from 6 for the Bulls, but that doesn't tell the full story. 86 plays 100%, but Bulls absolutely dominant in the scrum, and it didn't matter who was putting the ball in either. Discipline then, 1 yellow card for Glasgow, 2 for the Bulls. Penalties conceded, 13 for Glasgow, way too much. Again, we always say keep it in single fingers. 8 for the Bulls, they did that. And then attack penalties, 7 for Glasgow, 2 for the Bulls. Defense penalties, 6, plays 6. So it was on that attacking side of things that Glasgow were infringing. So especially when they were trying to force things too much in that second half, those 2 instances of the extra roll by 2 different players as well as an example of that as well. And scrum offences, 3 from Glasgow and none for the Bulls. So that Bulls scrum certainly more of a benefit, I would say, to the Bulls than Glasgow's lineout was for them, especially when you think in the second half when the Glasgow's lineout deliver for them, not really at all, right? But the Bulls, the scrum kept delivering all through the game. Okay, so those are stats. Let's talk about the teams. So we start with Glasgow, the home team. So got off brilliant start to get themselves 3 tries. And then, as the Bulls start clawing their way back, you feel like Glasgow kind of tensed up. And I thought they'd gotten over that. We obviously saw a similar instance in the Champions Cup against Toulon. But, at the time, I kind of was thinking of that as well. It's just the pressure that, the Champions Cup is at a higher level, that they haven't produced that in the knockout stages before, and therefore they don't have that maybe mental capacity, maybe a little bit of a mental block there for them. But they've delivered before in this competition. They had to go down to South Africa and they won the final down there, and you felt that mentally they should be good for this game. But the game was just slipping out of their hands, and they weren't able to change things on the field. It felt like, it felt like almost that they were relying on what had always, gotten them in good positions this year, which was put the ball through the hands, look to get to the edge, have support. Once you're in behind, then you get in yourself in decent position, and then you're able to strike from there. And that's what they were trying. We didn't see any tactical kicking from them. They kicked 25 times in the game, but can you remember in that second half any time when they were able to turn the Bulls defense and be able to put pressure on with chasers, where they were able to kick, bounce it into touch, and then put pressure on the Bulls lineout. Maybe get up, compete. There's a crooked throw, get themselves a scrum in and around the 22, and then be able to have a decent attacking platform. It didn't happen for them. A lot of their kicks were just, let's either put it up to compete, or let's kind of just put it down the middle, right? And it was more kind of relieving pressure, but not putting any pressure at all on the Bulls. And when you keep doing that, you just invite pressure back. And I think that was, a major issue for them. I love their ambition in terms of putting the ball through their hands, but it did feel like there need to be, just a little bit more kind of pragmatic thinking from their point of view. Get yourself into the Bulls half of the field and start putting pressure on. Doesn't matter who has the ball, because if there's a penalty conceded, yes, you can see ground, but you're not, you're not facing the possibility of the Bulls, getting in for a try because they're maybe just inside your half. But if you win the penalty, you have that option, post or corner. And again, they only had that once. And the only reason why they had it as well was they'd won the penalty in their own half, back chat from the Bulls, and it got marched into the Bulls half. So they didn't even, give themselves that position in that second half at all. It was just the back chat from the Bulls actually gave it to them. So for me, I thought, overall they've had a brilliant season. They wobbled in the table. I think they made the same mistake that Leinster had done, for a few seasons on the bounce, where Leinster were in the same position where they had their South African tour late on in the regular season, and they decided to send down a weakened squad, albeit with some decent players, sprinkled in as well. But they got a couple of hidings there, and they never quite recovered after that. Get knocked out of the Champions Cup, and then they have to then start rebuilding their form in the URC. I thought, in their quarterfinal against Connacht, we saw some signs that things were going well for them, and we saw that again in the first half of this game. But then in that second half, under pressure, and it's a different type of pressure where you're behind and you're chasing the game, where you have to force things. They weren't really in that position against Connacht in that game. Connacht were kind of got themselves close got themselves back close, but never quite took the lead in that second half. And I think that was the difference. And I talked about as well in that game where there's a difference between a team coming back within a score of you and you being able to kind of get your own score and keep them at arm's length, to them taking the lead, and then suddenly the pressure is on you. It's not just a case of anymore giving yourself a bit of a buffer on the scoreboard. It's now a case of you're behind, you've got to chase the game. What have you got? And when the questions were asked, Glasgow weren't able to deliver, honestly. Overall, a decent season for them, but home team in a semi-final, you've got to deliver, and they didn't. Now on to the Bulls. The Bulls in the first half, or the first period, let's say, of the first half, when they went 21-3 down, were doing what I was talking about in the build-up that I hope they don't do, which was relying more or less on forward power. And I don't mean that your forwards don't carry the ball. What I mean is when the Bulls play their absolute best, it's when backs and forwards combine. And we saw that as the comeback came. It wasn't just a case of the Bulls saying, we've got the ball, you guys just kind of hang out, you're not getting it back, and trying to just barge their way through the Glasgow team. When it was on for the forwards to carry, the forwards carried, they made the ground, and then when it was on to give it to the backs got the ball, and then they made some ground, and then the forwards would come back in, and there was much better mixer playing a 15-man game instead of sometimes you can accuse them of playing like an 8, 9, 10-man game, just keeping the ball in the forwards. Maybe it goes to maybe it goes to the 9, sometimes maybe the 10 gets some ball for a kick, but you're not really utilizing your whole team. But in the second half, a lot of the tries obviously scored by forwards. You had Papier scoring for the backs as well, but you could see that there was much more of a mix there. You had the likes of Hanekom popping up out wide to receive. You had centers and forwards combining, that kind of stuff, and when that happens, it asks a lot more difficult questions of the defense. I think that's why they made a lot more ground in the second half, got themselves in more positions, and were able to pin Glasgow in their own half as well, and then ultimately, get the scores that won the game for them. And arguably, had Pollard been kicking at his usual level, they probably wouldn't have been sweating it, in that last minute when Glasgow were attacking. They probably would have been, had enough of a buffer that Glasgow maybe would have needed a converted try just to, to send it to extra time, or for somebody to have to get a score with the clock in the red to win the game. So I really like the way they were able to kind of solve their problems, because obviously Glasgow were basically using the same trick on them every time and being able to make easy ground and get their scores. But then the Bulls then in the second half able to completely shut that down, but also bring their own attack into the game as well. And again, that mix of forwards and backs, when the forwards felt it was on, they went for it, but there was still that communication there of, if something else was on, they could move the ball and then go again with the forwards if they felt, it was getting a bit tougher to make the ground as well. So I thought excellent performance from them overall. And Grobbler, I thought it was fitting that he was the one that got the ball off the field at the end as well, because again he scored that try that not many other players were gonna score. You batted away, your biggest men have been bashing away at that line. They're not getting over, and when that happens, frustration can come in, you rush things, there's a stupid knock on, or you get held up over the line or something like that. But someone like Grobbler, absolutely calm, knows what he's doing, gets very low, really hard for anyone to get under him, but also to stop him getting over the line. And, I thought that was a crucial score for his team as well. So brilliant performance from the Bulls. And the final question to be asked at this stage is this finally the Bulls' year? 4 finals now. Can they get their hands on that trophy? And as I said before, there's, look at all the other teams, who've never lifted the trophy before. There's no one more deserving than this Bulls team.